So let us start this meditation. We'll start our Marananasati meditation, which is called contemplation of the death. Okay. Now, wherever you are, keep your body relaxed, which is not stiff. Don't keep anything with your hand, which will disturb your meditation. For a second, forget about the past, which is gone. For a second, forget about the future, which has not yet come. Forgetting the past and future, take your mind to the present moment. Having taken your mind to the present moment, let us think about our life. Just like the sun rises in the morning from the east, having arisen, it keeps going towards the west without remaining the same in two consecutive moments. And at the evening, just before the evening time, the sun sets in the west and disappears. Just like that, from the day we are born, without leaving a second as the same. Our life is also in a perpetual journey, in a flux of momentary change, and it keeps going towards the death. There's no two moments our life would remain the same, showing the impermanence of our life. The Buddha always advises us, Jivitang aniyatang, maranang niyatang. Life is indefinite, but the death is definite. There's no agreement with the Mara, the death, that our death would come only on this day. The death can be at any moment. But if your death is the last death of your samsara, that death is the supreme death that you can ever experience. Therefore, being unenlightened people, for the time being, let us contemplate on our death. Rather than wasting your time contemplating on the things which are not definite, the Buddha always teaches us it is worthwhile to contemplate on something is definitely on our way ahead. Therefore, keeping this Dhamma phrase in our mind, Jivitang aniyatang, maranang niyatang. Jivitang aniyatang, maranang niyatang. Let us meditate for a few minutes. Now close eyes. Now let us open your eyes very slowly, coming back to normal. Madam, can we start the
Yes,
talk?
proceed, Bhante, and the recording is started.
Okay, right. Okay, what is the normal ending time, madam?
About 10 minutes to 6, Bhante?
Okay, 10 minutes. We have almost 1 hour.
Yes, Bhante.
Samanta Chakravalesu Atra Gachantu Devata Sadhammang Munirajas Sunanto Saghamukkadhang Dhamma Savana Kalu Ayang Padanta Dhamma Savana Kalu Ayang Padanta Dhamma Savana Kalu Ayang Padanta Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Etang Santang Etang Panitang Yadidang Sabba Sankhara Samato Sabbhupati Patinissaggho Tanhakkayo Virago Nirodho Nibbhanante. This is peaceful, this is excellent, namely the stilling of all preparation, the relinquishments of all assets, destruction of craving, detachment, extinction, cessation. First of all, I pay my homage to the Buddha, the Dhamma, and Sangha, and I seek permission from all the Mahasangha who are available throughout the world to carry on with my Dhamma sermon today. Very good evening to all the listeners of Dhamma throughout the world who are listening online. This is the first Dhamma sermon that I'm delivering in this precious Vasa season, the rainy season. So I'm privileged to receive the invitation from servants of the Buddha, which have been serving for a long time for the Buddha Sasana. So for today's Dhamma talk, dear devotees, I have selected one topic to put the topic in a nutshell. It basically examines, did the Buddha teach Dhamma to some people thoroughly and to some people not so thoroughly? That was the essence of my Dhamma talk today. Whenever we are giving a Dhamma talk, it's always better to base the Dhamma talk on an original teaching of a Buddha, especially from the Sutta Pitaka. Therefore, with no hesitation, I selected one sutta from Samyutta Nikaya, which is generally known as the Connected Discourses of the Buddha. From this Samyutta Nikaya, there is one section called Salayatana Samyutta, Salayatana Vagga. So under this Salayatana Vagga, we have the Gamani Samyutta. So in this Gamani Samyutta, the devotees, there's one sutta titled Kettupama Sutta. The Pali name of this sutta is Kettupama Sutta. This sutta name is somewhat self-explanatory. So if you have some knowledge about the Pali language, Ketta means the paddy field, Upama means the example or the simile. So we can transliterate this topic as the simile of the field. The Buddha is very clever at relating things in the environment to his Dhamma sermon so that the listeners would better understand the Buddha's sermons. So this is one such occasion where Buddha uses some examples, some similes from the natural environment so that people would grow so familiar with the Dhamma teachings either. Dear devotees, before we start this Dhamma talk, so to set the setting, to set the background, I thought of discussing a few points with you. In today's world, not only at present, even in ancient times, there had been so much discrimination among the human beings. From olden times, even from the Buddha's times, the entire society had been divided into different groups based on caste, creed, wealth, and their birth, and so much distinctions. Especially this caste system had been tormenting people from a very early date. So with the emerging of the Buddha always went against this caste system. And the Buddha tried his best to eradicate this discrimination caste system from this very society. So we find one such attempt in this sutta. When Buddha was dwelling in Nalanda, the Pavarika's mango grove, dear devotees, there was one headman, the head of a village called Gamani. The full name of him was the Asibandaka Putta Gamani. This person came to the Buddha and paid homage and sat aside. And he asked one important question from the Buddha, which has a very significant value for even today's world. What was that question? The tone of his question, dear devotees, you might find it a bit negative, but later on, he will clarify himself. What was the question? The initial question was, does not the Buddha live compassionate towards all beings? What was the question? Does not the Buddha live compassionate towards all beings? The question itself is somewhat negative. From this question, we understand that this Gamani had doubts whether the Buddha was living compassionate towards all living beings with no difference. Having heard this somewhat negative question, dear devotee, the Buddha says, yes, Gamani, the Blessed One, the Buddha, lived compassionate towards all living beings. The Buddha replied. Having received this answer, dear devotees, now the Gamani goes to the second part of this question. What was that? Now he's telling the Buddha, then, dear Venerable Sir, then why? The Buddha preaches Dhamma to some people thoroughly and to some people not so thoroughly. What is the reason? In simple terms, dear devotee is asking, then why, if the Buddha is living compassionate towards all living beings, with no distinction, with no difference, then why the Buddha is teaching Dhamma very skillfully and with so much attention to one group and with not that much attention and significance to the other group? Why this difference? That was basically his question. Now, from this question, dear devotee, we understand that this Gamani is under impression that even in preaching Dhamma, Buddha does not preach Dhamma to all the people alike. For some group, the Buddha teaches some superior Dhamma. For the other group, the Buddha teaches Dhamma which is not that superior, not that valuable, not that useful, just a simple and just a very brief Dhamma. So this was his impression. This impression itself is a bit negative. Then, having heard that, dear devotee, without giving a direct question, without giving a direct answer, there's a method of the Buddha where sometimes the Buddha would ask a counter question from the listener, from the person who raised the question, to make it better understand. Here also, dear Dhamma friends, following that Dhamma propagation method, Dhamma teaching method, in which in Pali we call Patipucca Vyakarani, Pratiprashna, in Simile we call Pratiprashna, Pali we call Patipucca Vyakarani. Asking a counter question from the questioner, the Buddha would take his Dhamma sermon ahead. So what was the counter question Buddha asked here? Having heard this negative question, dear Dhamma friend, what was that negative question? Why does the Buddha teach Dhamma thoroughly to some and not so thoroughly to the others? Then the Buddha says, okay, then Gamani, let me ask a question from you. You can answer me as you fit. Then the Buddha asked, Gamani, you imagine there's a farmer in this world. This farmer has 3 paddy fields. This farmer has 3 paddy fields. The first one is of excellent quality. The second one is of middling quality. The third one is of very low quality with salty and rough land. In simple terms, dear Dhamma friends, Buddha says, Gamani, you imagine that there's a farmer, he has 3 paddy fields. The first one is of very high quality. The soil is very good. It is a fertile land. It is very good, very well for paddy cultivation. The third one is of very low quality. Its land is salty, rough, and not suitable for paddy cultivation. But there's a paddy field in between, which is of middling quality, which is not so good as the first one, which is not so bad as the third one. So, having these 3 paddy fields of three different nature, what would this farmer do, dear Gamani? If this farmer wants to sow seed, that means after preparing the three paddy fields, if this farmer wants to spread the seeds of paddy to these three different paddy fields, according to your mind, Gamini, to which paddy field, he would first sow the seeds? Is it the first paddy field which is of excellent quality? Or is it the second paddy field which is of middling quality? Or it is the third paddy field which is of very low quality? What do you think, Gamini? The Buddha asked a question. I hope this question is clear to you. So having heard this, dear devotees, Gamini gives an answer. Venerable Master, if that is so, in my opinion, this farmer would first sow seed to this paddy field which is of excellent quality. Having sown there, then he would move to the second paddy field which is of middling quality. Having sown seed there, remember this word, he says, that farmer might or might not go to his third paddy field, which is of very low quality, and sow the seed there. Why? Why he should sow seed in that very the paddy field which is of very low quality? Because the very big harvest that he would reap from this low quality paddy field, he can use that low quality harvest as fodder to his cattle, because it is not suitable for the consumption of the people. At least he can use that low quality harvest as fodder, as food for his cattle. Having received this answer, dear Dhamma friends, the Buddha says, just like that, Gami, just like the way you replied, just like the first paddy field, which is of very high quality, are my bhikkhus and bhikkhunis to me. I teach them the Dhamma, which is excellent in the beginning, which is excellent in the middle, which is excellent in the end, with correct meaning and correct phrasing. So my bhikkhus and bhikkhunis are like, just like that paddy field, which is of excellent quality. I teach them the brahmacharya, this noble practice, which would take them to the nibbana. Why should I teach them like that? Because they consider me as their shelter. They consider me as their island. They consider me as their protector. They consider me as their refuge. That is why. Having said that, dear Dhamma friend, Buddha says, just like the middling quality paddy field, dear Gamini, are my lay followers, lay upasakas and upasikas to me. I teach them the Dhamma, which is excellent at the beginning, which is excellent in the middle, which is excellent at the end, with the correct phrasing and correct meaning. I teach them the Sasana Brahmacharya, which leads them towards the Nibbana. Why? Why do I teach them like that? Because they too would consider me as their refuge. They take me as their island. They take me as their protector. They take me as their helper, that as their teacher. That is the reason. To the astonishment of this Gamini, dear Dhamma friend, now Buddha says, just like the paddy field, which is of very low quality, dear Gamini, are all these Brahmins, ascetics, and wanderers of other religious sects to me. But to them also, dear Gamini, I teach the Dhamma, which is excellent at the start, which is excellent in the middle, which is excellent at the end, with no difference. I teach them the Sasana Brahmacharya, the excellent Brahmacharya life, which is conducive towards the Nibbana. But here, Dhamma friend, Buddha does not use the word that they consider me as their refuge. Buddha doesn't say like that. Buddha does not say that they consider me as their island. Buddha does not say that they consider me as their refuge. The Buddha does not say that they consider me as their teacher. Why? Because they are not upasakas. They are not bhikkhus, they are not bhikkhunis, they are not upasakas, they are not upasikas. They have not received the Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha as their refuge. But still, there are some people in the world who are not Buddhist, not gone in refuge of the Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha. But for them also, Buddha says, dear Gamini, although they are like that of very low quality paddy field for me, I make no discrimination. I make no difference. I teach them the same Dhamma, which is excellent in the beginning, excellent in the middle, excellent at the end. And I teach them the same Sasana Brahmacharya, which is conducive towards the Nibbana. Why should I tell the same excellent Dhamma? Why should I teach the same excellent Sasana Brahmacharya to them, dear Gamini? Because if they understand at least one sentence, at least one Dhamma fact, at least one Dhamma word from my sermon, from my teaching, that itself would lead to them, that itself would lead them towards happiness and welfare for a long time. The Pali sentence Buddha uses is Digaratam Hitaya Sukaya Sangvatati. Digaratam means lot of nights, lot of time, or long duration time. That one word they hear from me, that one Dhamma sentence that hear from me would lead them towards a very long time for their welfare and happiness. That is why I'm telling them. But dear devotees, this Gamini did not expect this answer from the Buddha. He was under the impression that Buddha might or might not preach Dhamma towards them. He was under the impression that Buddha is teaching Dhamma only for bhikkhus and bhikkhunis, and for lay followers, lay upasakas and upasikas only, but not to the other Brahmins, ascetics, and wanderers of the same nature. But here we understand, dear devotee, the Buddha makes no difference. Can you remember the simile the Buddha gave? The Buddha mentioned before, the Gamini stated that what he can do with the very low quality harvest that farmer would receive from the very low quality paddy field. the farmer would use that very low quality harvest to feed the cattle as the fodder for the cattle. So, although this paddy field is of very low quality, that wise farmer would not leave it uncultivated. Just like for the first paddy field, which is of very excellent quality, and just like for the second paddy field, which is of middling quality, he would sow the same seed of paddy to the third paddy field also. By the low quality harvest that he would receive from this paddy field, he can make use of them to feed his cattle. Okay, dear Dhamma friends, having heard this, some doubts in Dhamma's mind faded away, but not 100%, not fully. Having understood that, Buddha took this discussion towards another area. What is that? The Buddha gives another parable, another simile here, Dhamma friends. Although this sutta is named as Kettupama Sutta, there's another beautiful simile which we can find in this sutta. Even after having heard this discourse, I suggest all the Dhamma listeners, please go through this sutta again, which is in Samyutta Nikaya, Salayatana Vagga, Gamani Samyutta, because the flow of this sutta, it is very psychological. It is very fitting oneself to understand gradually. Then the Buddha says, dear Dhamma friends, to the Gamini, Gamini, you again suppose that there's a man who has 3 water pots. There's one man who has 3 clay water pots. If this man wishes to store water, he thinks like that. He thinks like this. This man has 3 kinds of water pots. The first water pot, what is its nature? The first water pot has no cracks in its wall. Once you put water into that water pot, it will not leave the water seep through from its mouth, which is of excellent quality. And the second water pot, what is its nature? It also does not have any cracks, but it would let the water seep through its mouth. That is the nature of the second water pot. And also there's another water pot, Buddha says, this third water pot has cracks in the wall, and also it lets the water seep through its mouth time to time. To mention again, what are the nature of these 3 water pots, dear devotees? The first one is of excellent quality, which has no cracks in the wall. Once you pour the water in, it will not let the water seep through from its mouth. The second water pot, although it does not have any cracks in the wall, sometimes it lets water seep through from its mouth. But the third water pot, which is of very low quality, it has some cracks in the wall, and also it would let the water seep through from its mouth. Now the Buddha says, dear Gamini, now the owner of these 3 water pots wishes to store. Think, Gamini, in which water pot this person would first store water, according to your opinion? Is it the first water pot which has no cracks in the wall and also which would not let the water seep through from its mouth? Or is it the second water pot which has no cracks in the wall but which would let the water seep through from its mouth? Or what do you think? Is it the third water pot which has both cracks in the wall and which would not let the water seep through, which would let the water seep through? Having heard that, dear Dhamma friends, Gamani says, Venerable Master, if that is so, that person would first store water in the water pot, which is of excellent quality, which has no cracks in the wall, which would not let the water seep through from its mouth. Having stored water there, then he would move towards the second water pot, which either has no cracks in the wall, but which would let the water seep through from its mouth. And having stored water there, this person might or might not store water in the third water pot, which has both cracks in the wall and also which would let the water seep through from its mouth. So this was the Gamini's answer. Now you can simply understand, the Dhamma friend, if any water pot has cracks in the wall, that means there's an opportunity to water to leak. And if any water pot would leave the water seep through from its mouth, that means there's no complete protection for the stored water which is inside. Then having received this answer, dear Dhamma friends, the Buddha comes back to the same answer. What is that? Now Buddha says to the Asibandhaka Putta Gahamani, just like the first water pot, dear Gahamani, which has no cracks in the wall and also which would not the water seep through from its mouth, are the bhikkhus and bhikkhunis to me. I teach them the Dhamma which is excellent at the beginning, which is excellent in the middle, which is excellent at the end. And I teach them the Sasana Brahmacharya, which is conducive towards the Nibbana, with correct meaning and correct phrasing. These two words are also important, dear Dhamma friends. The correct meaning and correct phrasing. Why I should tell them the Dhamma which is good at the beginning and the middle and the end? Dear Gamani, Buddha says, because these bhikkhus and bhikkhunis are considering me as their refuge. They take me as their island. They take me as their protector. They take me as their teacher. That is why. So the Buddha compared these bhikkhus and bhikkhunis towards this water pot which has no cracks in the wall and which would not let the water seep through from its mouth. Having said that, Buddha says to the Gamini, dear Dhamma friends, just like the water pot which has no cracks, but still it would let the water seep through from its mouth, are these lay upasakas and upasikas lay followers to me. For them also, dear Gamini, I teach them the Dhamma, which is excellent in the beginning, which is excellent in the middle, which is excellent at the end. What are the Pali words of that? Adi Kalyanam, Majje Kalyanam, Paryosana Kalyanam. Those are the very words of the Buddha. Then again, the Buddha says, I teach them the Sasana Brahmacharya, the holy life, which is conducive towards the Nibbana, with correct phrasing and correct meaning. Why should I tell them like that? Buddha says, because Gamini, they too consider me as their refuge. They too consider me as their island. They too consider me as their teacher. They too consider me as their protector. That is why. Having said that, dear devotee, Buddha says, Gamani, just like the water pot, which has cracks in the wall, and also which lets the water seep through from its mouth, are these Brahmins, wanderers, and other religious sects to me. But Gamini, for them also I teach the same Dhamma, which is excellent at the beginning, which is excellent in the middle, which is excellent at the end, with correct meaning and correct phrasing. I teach them the same Sasana Brahmacharya, the holy life, which is conducive towards the Nibbana with no difference. Why should I tell them like that? But here also, dear devotees, remember, Buddha does not mention, just like in the previous two groups, Buddha did not mention that these Sramanas and Brahmins of other religions, they too are considering me as their refuge. Buddha does not mention that they are considering me as their protector. Because you know, the other religious people would not have much faith on the Buddha. But still, sometimes, time to time, they come to the Buddha and listen. But to the astonishment of this Gamani, Buddha says the Buddha makes no difference in delivering the Dhamma. Buddha says, why should I tell them the same Dhamma with no difference, Gamani? Because after hearing my Dhamma, if they remember at least one sentence, if they remember at least one word of Dhamma, that itself would lead them to their welfare and happiness for a very long time. What was the phrase Buddha used? Digarattam hitaya sukhaya samvattati. It will lead them for their happiness and welfare for a very long time. That is why I'm teaching them the same teaching, dear God. Having heard that, dear Dhamma friends, this Gamini was very happy because he never expected this answer from the Buddha. That is why for two times he mentioned. In the first example also he mentioned when Buddha was relating to these three types of paddy fields towards to the Bhikkhu Sangha, Bhikkhuni Sangha, and the Upasaka, Upasikas, and the other religious sects. He mentioned for these other religious sects, Buddha would or would not. This farmer would not sow seed in the third paddy field, which is of very low quality. Why? This Gamani was not sure whether Buddha is such a great person. And in the second example also, dear Dhamma friends, this Gamani did not mention for the third water pot that person would store water. That he mentions this person might or might not store water in the third waterfall. Why? This Gamini was not sure whether Buddha is such a great person. But having heard these two answers from the Buddha, Gamini grew so happy. The Gamini grew so saddha, with so saddha, so much faith. And he mentioned, excellent Master Gautama. Excellent. Just like you have put something which had been long down right. Just like that you have shown a person, just like that you have shown a correct way to a person who is lost. Just like you are holding a lamp in thick darkness, allowing people who has eyes to see the forms. Just like you expounded Dhamma excellently. For the first time, I'm going in refuge in Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha. And from this day onwards, you remember me as a lay upasaka. I will go refuge in Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha for the life. This is the way the Gamini responded. Okay, having related this story with this sutta, dear Dhamma friend, what is the message that we can take? What is the moral that we can learn from this teaching, from this sutta? From ancient times, today, from ancient times towards the present time, whenever the Buddhist Sangha, be them bhikkhus or bhikkhunis, lay people, the upasakas or upasika, when they were delivering Dhamma, according to the Buddha's advice, the common characteristic of delivering Dhamma is making no difference for the audience. What Buddha advises us to do is, when you are giving Dhamma to others, you should not make any discrimination. No distinction between people. Because all the discrimination, all the distinctions that you can see in the world today are man-made. All the caste systems, be them kingly class or Brahmanic class or the low class, all these caste systems grew later on only. First, the man was born, then all these caste systems were attributed to him. Then all the other discrimination that we can see in today's world, some are wealthy and some are not wealthy. Some are educated, some are not so educated. Some are so ethical, some are not so ethical. Some are literate, some are not so literate. Some are pleasant, some are not so pleasant. Some are talkative, some are not so talkative. Some are making huge noise all the time, some are very silent. All these differences, all these distinctions are everywhere, dear Dhamma. But Buddha advises us, when you are delivering Dhamma, make no difference, because all these jati, jara, vyadi, marana, soka, parideva, dukkha, domanas, all these suffering that we experience in this world are common to all people. The Buddha emerges in this world to show a way out from this painful samsara. Therefore, the main purpose of Buddha's Dhamma is helping beings to attain the Nibbana, nothing else. If we consider, dear Dhamma friends, why would a Buddha would emerge in this world? What is the main purpose of a Buddha emerging in this world? Is it to preach people how to live in the society? No, that is not the way. Does the Buddha come to this world to teach people how to earn money, how to live an ethical life? No. Even Buddhas, before the Buddha's emergence in this world, people knew how to live in the society. People knew how to do merits. People knew how to, after uh, attaining merits, after collecting merits, how to go to the divine world. They knew how to go to the Brahma worlds. Therefore, Buddha does not come to this world to teach people how to accumulate merit and go to the Deva world. No, that is not the purpose. The Buddha does not come to this world to teach people how to accumulate merit and go to the Brahma worlds. No, that was not the purpose. Because even before the emergence of the Buddha in this world, people knew how to go to Deva world. People knew how to go to the Brahma world and spend millions and millions years there. So what did exactly people did not know? They did not know how to end this perpetual nature, sansaric nature. They did not know how to end this sansara, which is full of suffering. So the main purpose of emergence of the Buddha in this world is only teaching the beings how to attain Nibbana and end this sansara. That is why the ascetic Gautama, ascetic Siddhartha was searching King Satya Gavesi, King Kusala Gavesi. The very word he uses is King Kusala Gavesi, not the King Punya Gavesi. Punya is one, the Kusala is another. Although they have two similarities, lot of similarity. The Punya would extend your sansara, giving all the pleasures which you need, while the Kusala would take you to the Nibbana. Kusala is the ways how you would decrease the lower dosa moha, and at the end you will attain the Nibbana. So the main intention of the Buddha of emerging in this world is to teach the Dhamma which would lead the worldly beings towards Nibbana. Therefore, Buddha says, when you are delivering the Dhamma, don't make any distinction. Can you imagine, dear Dhamma friends, why did the Buddha compare the bhikkhus and bhikkhunis once towards a paddy field which is of excellent quality? Why? Because since the bhikkhus and bhikkhunis are cultivating this magga, Arya Magga, which is noble path, it is very easy for them to, Buddha to preach Dhamma to them because they will grasp it very cleverly. Because they have set the background to listening Dhamma. That is why Buddha compared them towards a paddy field which is of excellent quality. Then Buddha compared the lay followers, lay upasakas and upasikas to a paddy field which is of middling quality. Not so good like bhikkhus and bhikkhunis, but not so bad as other religious sects. There are people in this world, lay upasakas and upasikas, who can grasp the essence of the Buddha's Dhamma and attain Nibbana. That is why. But sometimes, just like the paddy field, which is of middling quality, sometimes there can be some drawbacks, but still they are quite good. But the Buddha compared the religious people of other sects to a paddy field, which is of very low quality. But still, there could be very rarely some people who would understand the Dhamma. That is why Buddha makes no difference, makes no distinction in delivering Dhamma. And again, Dhamma friends, Buddha compared bhikkhus and bhikkhunis of this dispensation towards to what? He compared a water pot which has no cracks in the wall. The water is like Dhamma. If you put the Dhamma inside, since the wall has no cracks, there's no chance to leakage. And even from the mouth of this water pot, the water would not seep through and escape because their basement foundation is quite strong. And also Buddha compares these lay followers to a water pot, which has no cracks in the wall, but still, which would let the water seep through from its mouth. Just like sometimes lay followers and lay followers, upasakas and upasikas, although they are hearing Dhamma, this Dhamma would not go to their mind to their well. Why? Because they are so disturbed with their worldly affairs. Sometimes you can listen attentively, but sometimes you cannot. That is why. Just imagine a water pot. Although you put water there, sometimes the water would spill, not like the first one. And Buddha compares, dear Dhamma friends, the other people, other religious people, wanderers, Brahmins, all the people to a water pot, which has cracks in the wall. Cracks is very symbolical. If there are cracks in the wall, there is a chance the water to leak. And also sometimes the water would seep through from its mouth. Because since they don't have any saddha towards the Buddha, the things they would listen would not remain in their mind. Very rarely, some Dhamma facts would go to their mind. That is why Buddha compared them to a water pot, which has cracks in the wall and also which would let the water seep through from its mouth. So from this sutta, dear Dhamma friends, we understand that the Buddha has a very great compassion towards all the living beings. That is why even when describing the qualities of the Buddha, we always mention Sattva Deva Manusthana. He's a teacher for all the devas and manushya, all the deities and humans. No difference. And also Buddha has this great compassion. And Buddha did not care about the caste system. Whoever comes to his sasana of low caste or high caste, what Buddha is interested is whether this person can understand this deep Dhamma, whether this person can understand this Dhamma and take their life towards Nibbana. That's the only criterion he was so interested. His caste was immaterial, his wealth was immaterial, his outward appearance was immaterial, his family background was immaterial for the Buddha. Therefore, as the bhikkhus and bhikkhunis of today's world, as the lay followers of today's world of the Buddha, dear Dhamma friend, whenever you are talking to a person, when you are talking, giving a Dhamma talk, even you are giving a Dhamma, make no difference from their education background or their family background or their social background, because they are immaterial when it comes to attaining the Nibbana and answering the and understanding the Dhamma. So having said that, dear Dhamma friends, I would not take this Dhamma discourse any further. I hope from the very starting to the end, you listen to this Dhamma. So this is a very, very important period of time in year, which is the rainy season, the Vaskale in Sinhala, or the Vasa season has just started. And there are so many meritorious deeds happening around the world in Buddhist countries and non-Buddhist countries. So you have a lot of opportunity to do meritorious deeds, to learn Dhamma, practice Dhamma, to cultivate meditation, to develop meditation, and teach Dhamma, and write Dhamma, and listen to Dhamma. Don't be heedful. Be heedful in learning Dhamma. Heedlessness should be eradicated. So, having said that, dear Dhamma friends, let me wind up my Dhamma talk today. Let me draw the line now. I think you have heard the Dhamma well. Listening to Dhamma is a very, very powerful meritorious thing. Preaching Dhamma is equally meritorious. If you understand, just like the Sutta mentioned to us, just like the Buddha mentioned to us, if you at least understood any one sentence, any one Dhamma fact from my Dhamma sermon also, dear Dhamma fact, it would lead to you for your welfare and happiness for a very long time. Even by preaching this Dhamma talk, I did not consider any discrimination towards any person. Anybody who is listening to this Dhamma from anywhere of the world should take this Dhamma with good grace, with no distinction. The only expectation that we had as Dhamma preachers that you would listen to this Dhamma and understand Dhamma, not only understanding, you would practice this Dhamma at your level best. So all the merits that we have accrued by preaching this Dhamma and all the merits that we have accrued by listening to this Dhamma, let us first transfer all these merits to all the deities who are protecting this world and this Buddha Sasana. May all the deities rejoice in this Dhamma and attain the supreme bliss of Nibbana. And also we wish, by the power of the merits that we have accrued by preaching this Dhamma and listening to this Dhamma, let us transfer all these merits towards all the departed relatives of ours from our mother's party and from our father's party, and all the heroic soldiers who have sacrificed their life, limb, and liberty toward the sovereignty and integrity of my country. May all rejoice in this merit. May they attain the supreme bliss of Nibbana. And also, we wish, by the power of the merit that we have accrued by preaching this Dhamma and listening to this Dhamma, may all the people who are living in this universe, let all of us rejoice in this Dhamma. May us make our this worldly affairs ethical and Dhammic. And if we have any spiritual goal, may we all be able to fulfill that spiritual goal and finally attain the supreme bliss of Nibbana. Akasatta cha bummatta deva naga mahittika punyantang anumoditva chirang rakkantu sasanang. Akasatta cha bummatta deva naga mahittika punyantang anumoditva chirang rakkantu desanang. Akasatta cha bummatta deva naga mahittika punyantang anumoditva chirang rakkantu tvang sada. Abhivadana silissa niccang buddha pachayino chattaro dhamma vaddhanti ayuvanno sukhang balang ayurarogya sampatti sagga sampatti mevacha ato nibbana sampatti iminate samijjatu. May all beings be free from sorrow and pain. Sabbe satta bhavantu sukhitatta. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Much merit, Bhante. I hope I can be heard. Much merit, Bhante, for that very clearly and in a very enthralling way, the way it started, the way Bhante presented it from the beginning. One had to hang on to every word because I wasn't quite sure what the ending was of the first three. Much merit, Bhante, and it had a very valuable lesson as well. We can just, it was very beautifully timed. We have maybe 5 minutes if anyone has any questions to raise from Bhante. I'm sure Bhante will be very happy to answer them. I just like to tell Bhante that just a fortnight ago, Saturday before last, we had the Aganya Sutta. And so that was also reminded of that when we were
Yes.
listening to what Bhante said about the discriminations and the caste system.
Yes.
That was the first one for this month in July. And that was, that's on our, Bhante, we now upload everything. This will be the 203rd Sutta. Bhante, you will be happy because you came from a long time you have been coming to service. Anyone who wants any questions, please? Please unmute yourself. You can unmute yourselves. Yes. Anybody has any questions or comments? Don, would you like to make a comment?
Thank you. If I may, I'd like to just make a comment. Of course, I'd like to thank Bhante for taking time to give us this discourse. It highlights a lot of issues. I have many issues, but I'm just going to not do that now because the time is short. But I'd like to just comment on one important thing which strikes me when I have studied the Kettupama Sutta, which is Anguttara, I think it is 42.7 or something. Yes. And the line which strikes me the most is Sayatapi Gamanhi Yang, I think, Adum Kettang Aggang Evam Eva Meyang Bhikkhuni Bhikkhu Bhikkhuni Yo. It is that word which I find that the Buddha uses quite strikingly. Bhikkhuni Bhikkhuni Yo. I don't find that term much used in other suttas where there is a clear togetherness in the use of the term bhikkhuni bhikkhuniyo as being of equal stature and standing. Could the Bhante please reflect on this particular term as the rest of the sutta talks about the whole area of differences and how to bring about unity?
Yes, thank you for your comment. So actually here, the Buddha uses the bhikkhu, bhikkhuniyo. Even I think the purpose of mentioning that the word is to make clear that there's no discrimination even between the bhikkhus and bhikkhunis as far as the ability to understand the Dhamma is concerned. Because there are so many places in the Tripitaka, the Buddha says, there's no difference between male and female followers, Shravakas of the Buddha. If they are competent enough to understand the Buddha Dhamma and practice and take them towards a Nibbana, there's no difference. So being a female or being a male, being a bhikkhu or bhikkhuni has nothing to do with understanding the Dhamma. It's all about their mindset and their mental power, the mental competency to understand the Dhamma. So that is why Buddha very distinctively mentioned bhikkhu, bhikkhu, bhikkhuniyo. So otherwise he would have just said bhikkhus only, because the audience is one layperson. So there's another the negative interpretation which I come across in very some other places also, because sometimes when the Buddha says bhikkhave, people would think that it is only focused on bhikkhus. No, actually mostly the Buddha preached the Dhamma in an audience of bhikkhus. Therefore, he just addressed the people in front of him. So it doesn't mean that it is not applicable to the bhikkhunis and other people, but it is equally applicable. So we have to take it with a context, not separately as such. So I think the bhikkhu bhikkhunio, the word itself is suggestive that the Buddha had no discrimination between bhikkhus and bhikkhunis when it comes to the understanding the Dhamma and practice of the Dhamma towards Nibbana. I think that is the thing that we should highlight here.
Thank you, Bhante. You, if I may come back, you raised a very, very important factor there, which is the term bhikkhave. This is from my own very tiny layperson's understanding of the teachings of the Buddha Dhamma. I have also read Venerable Analayo's paper on this whole area of the use of the term bhikkhave, which he co-wrote with, I think it was called Alice Corbett, or a lady of that name, where he talks about the use of the term bhikkhave in the optative sense, to mean that it is being used in an idiomatic format.
Yes.
Not in a generic sense, or in a tense, excuse me. And then he compares the use of the terms in the Pali text with the Chinese agamas, where there isn't much of a reference to bhikkhaves. But bhikkhaves can be taken, I take it, and as I understand it, I take it to be, because the Buddha referred to the family of the Anuruddha as Anuruddhas. It was a generic reference, idiomatic reference. So I tend to regard the use of the term bhikkhave more as a generic idiomatic term.
Yes, actually, there's another point that we can highlight. Sometimes people would think that that formally ordained people are only bhikkhus, and all the other people cannot be called with the name of the bhikkhus. But sometimes the Buddha had used the word bhikkhu to address some people who would attentively listen to the Buddha's Dhamma. Because, for an instance, when Buddha delivered the first Dhamma discourse, there were no bhikkhus in the world. Buddha addressed Dveme Bhikkhave Anta. So Buddha was addressing the Panchavaggiya bhikkhus as Bhikkhave. But at that time of listening to this Dhamma, they were not formally ordained. They were not ordained. They had no higher ordination, but still Buddha uses the word Bhikkhave. Dveme Bhikkhave Anta Pabbajitena Sevitabba. Here the word Bhikkhave is suggestive of any intelligent audience who would lend their ear to the Buddha's words. So we have to take this word not so in a narrow sense, but with a context, I think. It's a contextual term to denote any person who with faith would listen to the Buddha's Dhamma. I think we have to take it with that sense.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ron, and thank you, Bhante. It has been so very lucidly explained, and that is Bhante's way of preaching the Dhamma. It has always been. So we wish Bhante also good health, a long life, and may all Bhante's spiritual aspirations be fulfilled. Yeah, have you got a longer time, Bhante, in India?
Actually, I'm here until December, mid-December. So I wish to return to Sri Lanka after completing one year here, because I'm busy teaching in the Research Institute of Mahabodhi Society for the diploma students, and working as a supervisor for PhD students, and also teaching in the monastery as a monastic teacher.
Thank you, Bhante, for having given us your precious time and such a valuable Dhamma sermon. We will then end thanking everyone who joined and those for having asked those questions. Thank you very much, everyone.
Much merits, madam, for giving me the opportunity to preach Dhamma. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I will then end the meeting. Everyone, Saranai to all.
There was.